In the dusty attic of a farmhouse in Iowa, a man searching for antiques found a small wooden box hidden beneath the floorboards. The air smelled of mildew and dry wood, and every step stirred dust that had been sleeping for decades. Inside the box was a worn photo album, its leather edges cracked and its clasp rusted, yet still holding its secrets tightly. He turned the stiff pages one by one, each corner brittle, each photograph fading with age. At first the pictures seemed ordinary, showing life on a farm long ago. Children playing, women baking, men plowing. He felt the charm of history in his hands, simple lives frozen in time. But then one image made him stop and lean closer. It was another family portrait, another harvest scene, but there was something strange about it. He frowned, rubbed his eyes, and held it toward the light. What he saw was something he could not explain. The photo showed a wide field with corn cut down to its roots, the earth dry and dark after months of hard work. A family stood proudly in front, their clothes neat and their faces serious, as was common in those days. Women wore long skirts, men stood in suspenders, and children clutched baskets full of apples. It was the kind of image that carried the weight of pride, a family showing proof of their harvest, their survival, and their prosperity. At first glance, nothing seemed out of place, yet the longer he looked, the more his eyes were pulled upward. There in the sky was the moon, large and pale, a familiar circle that guided farmers through autumn nights. But next to it was another, smaller, sharper, brighter than the first. Two moons hung in the sky above the family, one known and one impossible. His breath caught as he realized this detail was not a flaw, not a smudge. It was too clear, too deliberate. He leaned closer, studying the strange second moon as if the answer might be hidden in its edges. The surface was faint yet sharp, with shadows that seemed like craters, as if the lens had captured something real. It did not look like damaged film or careless printing. It looked solid. He tilted the photo to the light, but the image did not change. Two moons stared back at him, one ordinary and one like an eye from another world. His hands shook as he lowered the album and tried to steady his thoughts. How could this exist, and why was it in such an ordinary family picture? He turned the page in search of more proof, but the other photographs showed only barns, orchards, and children at play. Only this one image carried the strange mark in the sky, and that made it more haunting. In those times, a family portrait was no small thing. Photographs were not casual, they were deliberate, expensive, and often rare. Families prepared for them days in advance, wearing their best clothes, polishing shoes, and combing their hair until it was just right. These photos were a record of pride, a symbol to pass down to their children. They were a promise that their name and their work would not be forgotten. That was why this single image felt so disturbing. If this was a moment of pride, why would the family allow such a strange detail to remain? Why would the photographer risk his reputation on a flawed or altered picture? In 1903, there were no tricks advanced enough to make something like this. Double exposures were crude, overlays obvious, but this moon was perfect. It belonged there, yet it did not. The man sat in the attic staring at the photograph as the light outside began to fade. The second moon seemed almost to glow more strongly as the shadows deepened. His chest grew tight as he realized that he was not looking at a mistake. He was looking at a truth, captured by a lens that saw more than the human eye could. A truth no one was ever meant to see. Somewhere in Iowa in 1903, a family had stood proudly in their field, their baskets full and their hearts certain of the future. They had faced the camera with dignity, wanting only to leave behind a record of their lives. But in that moment, the sky above them held not one moon, but two. And with that discovery, the man in the attic realized his hands were trembling not from dust or age, but from fear. Life in 1903 moved at a slower pace, ruled not by clocks or machines but by the rising and setting of the sun. Families on the farm woke before dawn, their work beginning with the crow of the rooster and ending only when the last light of the day disappeared behind the horizon. Every member of the household had a duty, from the smallest child gathering eggs to the eldest tending the fields. Seasons were their calendar, and the harvest was the proof of their labor. The harvest moon was more than just a light in the night sky. It was a guide. Its glow allowed farmers to work late into the evening, to cut down crops and gather food before the frost arrived. It was trusted, almost sacred, a celestial clock that told them when to plant, when to reap, when to rest. But in this photograph the moon gave them something else, a vision no farmer should have seen, a vision of two moons above their field. The man who captured this moment was named Silas Hargrove, a traveling photographer who wandered from town to town offering his services. He was known for his honesty, a man whose work was simple and direct, with none of the fanciful tricks some photographers were beginning to experiment with in cities. He carried with him a heavy wooden camera, fragile glass plates, and the chemicals that would burn images into memory. His portraits were respected, not for their artistry but for their truth. He photographed weddings, funerals, and harvests, giving families a piece of themselves they could hold forever. There was no reason to suspect him of deceit, no history of tampering or manipulation. Yet, in this single photograph, on this single glass plate, there was something that did not belong. The negative itself revealed the second moon as clearly as the first, as though the lens had opened not only to light but to another world. The family captured in the frame were the Holloways, a household of 7 who were well known in their small community. They were respected for their hard work and admired for their prosperity. Their fields rich, their livestock healthy, their reputation spotless. In town they were remembered as generous, attending church each Sunday and helping neighbors when storms struck. The photograph showed them in the height of their pride, standing tall in their field with the fruits of their labor piled around them. Yet the haunting truth was that this moment would be one of their last records. Within months of the photo being taken, the Holloway's name began to disappear. County ledgers that had once listed their farm stood blank. Neighbors no longer spoke of them, or when they did, it was with lowered voices. By 1904, the Holloways had vanished entirely, leaving behind nothing but the house, the land, and a single photograph that bore 2 moons. It was as though they had been erased, not just from the earth but from memory itself. The photograph was eventually studied by historians who specialized in early glass plate negatives, and what they found left them unsettled. The plate was carefully cleaned and examined under bright lights, every inch inspected for scratches, cracks, or evidence of tampering. No marks appeared that could explain the strange second moon. The chemicals were aged but stable, the exposure steady, the image sharp. When the negative was enlarged and scanned, the truth became clearer. The second moon was not a smudge or accidental blur. It had markings, faint but undeniable, lines of shadow that resembled craters. Its edges were too sharp to be dismissed as light damage, and its shape too solid to be ignored. It was not a reflection. It was not a trick. It was, impossibly, another world caught on glass. The lens had captured something the eye may never have noticed, freezing it forever in silver nitrate. Word of the discovery spread, and soon the photograph was being whispered about in town. People who had seen it years ago remembered their first reactions, some laughing it off as a flaw, others uneasy even then. Farmers and their wives gathered in quiet corners of church halls, speaking about what it might mean. Children who had seen the second moon in the picture had asked their parents if the sky really had held 2 that night. Some dismissed it as nothing more than a quirk of photography, a meaningless error that meant little. But in small towns, strange things were rarely dismissed so quickly. Every odd detail was weighed, judged, and often tied to larger fears about fate and God. For some, the second moon was an omen, a sign that something dark hung over the Holloways. For others, it was a warning meant for everyone who had lived beneath that October sky. The Holloways themselves became the subject of gossip, though the whispers were never spoken aloud in their presence. People wondered if they had done something to invite the vision into their photograph, or if the photographer had captured something meant only for them. When their farm began to falter, and their animals grew restless, neighbors remembered the photograph and muttered that the second moon had cursed them. Omens carried weight in such communities, and fear spread as quickly as rumor. In a place where faith and superstition lived side by side, the sight of 2 moons was not taken lightly. It was a mystery to some, a divine sign to others, and a curse to many more. Astronomers were later consulted, and their records for October of 1903 revealed nothing unusual. The harvest moon had been full and bright, shining just as it always had during that season. No planetary body had come near enough to the Earth to appear like a second moon. No comet had crossed the skies to give such an effect. By science, the sky had been empty except for the familiar glow of the single harvest moon. Yet the photograph told a different story, a frozen truth that no telescope of the time had recorded. It raised a chilling question. If the sky had been empty, then what had the camera captured? Could the lens have seen something hidden from human eyes? A fleeting glimpse of a world that brushed against ours only for a moment. The idea lingered like a shadow across the photograph, a shadow that deepened each time someone dared to look at it. The sky should have been empty, and yet the image suggested it had never been empty at all. Long before the photograph was ever taken, stories of two moons had been told across cultures, whispered in myths and carved into memory. In old Chinese folklore there was a tale of a phantom moon that appeared only in certain seasons, a pale twin that foretold disasters when it shone beside the true one. In medieval Europe, villagers spoke of the Watcher's Eye, a second light in the sky that appeared to gaze upon them with judgment, watching their sins from above. Among Native American stories were warnings of a false moon, a trickster in the heavens that brought famine, disease, and despair to those who looked upon it too long. Though these tales belonged to different lands and times, they carried a similar warning. A second moon was not a gift, but a threat. When the Holloway photograph revealed not one but two moons, it felt as though those scattered legends had been pulled together into one moment of truth. Had the Holloways captured something humanity was never meant to see? The family's life began to change soon after the photograph was taken, as though the strange image had marked them. The crops that had grown tall and strong all summer began to wither despite the skies remaining clear and the rains falling steady. Corn stalks bent and collapsed before harvest, and apples rotted faster than they could be picked. Their livestock, once healthy and strong, grew restless and thin, refusing to graze even when the pastures were green. Neighbors noticed that the Holloway children looked pale and tired, their eyes shadowed as if they had not slept. When asked, the children whispered strange things, saying they could see two night skies when they looked up after dusk, one layered over the other. Some of the older children said the smaller moon followed them when they walked at night, drifting just above the treetops. These stories unsettled the townsfolk, and soon the Holloways found that their neighbors no longer came to visit. People began to avoid them, passing their farm in silence, whispering only when they were far away. By the spring of 1904 the Holloways were no longer seen in town at all. Their farm, once a place of steady work and harvest, had grown eerily quiet. Weeds crept through the fields where crops once stood, and the barn doors swung open in the wind. Some neighbors claimed they saw the family walking the fields at night, moving slowly under the moonlight, though no one dared to approach. Then one day the farm was empty. The house stood open, its windows dark, its rooms still filled with furniture and clothing. Plates were left on the table, tools were left in the fields, as if the family had simply walked away in the middle of the day. No record was ever found of them leaving the county, no wagon seen carrying them to another town, no papers filed to sell their land. There were no graves either, no sign of illness or death. It was as though the Holloways had stepped out of the photograph itself, fading from the world just as quietly as they had lived. It was as though they had left our world behind, walking not into another town or another state, but into the second moon itself. When the photograph resurfaced in the modern day, it was not just held in the trembling hands of collectors but placed under the cold eyes of science. The glass plate negative was scanned with high-resolution equipment, each line of silver nitrate examined under digital light. Every scratch and every grain of age was catalogued, but the second moon remained untouched by flaw. Analysts tried the simplest explanation first, searching for evidence of a double exposure. Yet the lines of the family, the field, and the sky all matched a single exposure without overlap or blur. Astronomers compared the night sky of October 1903 against planetary charts and found no celestial body near the moon at that time. Atmospheric distortion was tested as well, But the image was too sharp, too clean, with edges perfect against the pale background. And yet, when magnified, the second moon showed surface details, markings that looked like craters, shadows that no known moon or planet could explain. It was undeniable. The camera had captured something real, but something unknown, something that should not have been there. Faced with what they could not dismiss, scientists and historians began to theorize, each suggestion darker than the last. One explanation was that the photograph had briefly captured a hidden celestial body, perhaps a rogue moon that brushed past the Earth before vanishing again into the blackness of space. Others argued that the photograph might have captured more than just light, that the glass had opened a window into a moment when reality itself thinned. If the lens had caught a rift in the sky, then the second moon may not have been ours at all, but a fragment of another world layered over our own. More unsettling voices suggested it was neither a planet nor a rift, but something watching, something that chose that moment to look back. Whatever the answer, each theory ended the same way. Whatever it was, it should not have been seen. Not then. Not now. The Holloways had stood before a camera that revealed too much, and the result was an image that should never have existed. As the photograph made its way online, debates grew louder and stranger. Skeptics dismissed it as an old hoax, refusing to believe in the power of glass and light to show what eyes could not. Others called it proof of a hidden history, evidence that the world had secrets buried not just in the earth but in the sky above us. Forums filled with theories, ranging from lost moons to interdimensional watchers. Some people claimed that the photograph was cursed, saying those who studied it too long began to dream of standing in fields under two moons. Others warned against staring at it for more than a moment, swearing that the second moon seemed closer the longer one looked. The idea spread like fire. The photograph was not just an image of the past, but a window still open. And if that window remained open, then what stared out from the second moon might not remain distant forever. Because sometimes, when you stare at the photo too long, the second moon seems closer than before. Photographs are more than pieces of paper. They are fragments of time sealed in silver and light. They do not just capture faces and fields, they capture truths, sometimes truths no one meant to reveal. When the Holloway family stood before the lens in 1903, they believed they were freezing their moment of pride, a simple record of their harvest. Yet the camera saw more than they did, showing not just what was visible but what was hidden. That is the haunting power of photographs. They remind us that memory can lie but film does not. The difference between what we see and what is real can be terrifying. Our eyes may look at the sky and see one moon, but the photograph tells us that on one October night, the sky held two. If that truth slipped through once, then how many other truths remain unseen, waiting to be caught by accident? The unanswered questions linger long after the photograph is closed and the attic box returned to dust. What if the Holloways were not just unlucky, but chosen? Chosen to stand beneath two moons, chosen to vanish without record, chosen to step beyond the world we know. What if the second moon was not simply an object but a doorway, an invitation, or a warning? And what if it returns? Our skies have been studied by satellites, telescopes, and machines far stronger than the fragile lens of 1903, yet none have seen what Silas Hargrove's camera caught. Still, the thought hangs heavy. If it returned once, it could return again. And if it does, will we still call it a moon, or will we know it for what it truly is, something far worse? In 1903, a family posed beneath the harvest sky. They stood with baskets of apples, their faces steady, their future certain. They believed the camera would preserve their pride, their proof of survival, their moment in time. And it did. But behind their smiles, frozen forever in glass, hung a second moon. It watched them from the faded sky, sharp and silent, its surface lined with shadows not belonging to our world. The Holloways left behind no graves, no papers, no trace of where they went. All that remains is a photograph, an image of two moons, and the chilling truth that no one ever saw them again.